Hello, welcome again to Thursday night, 8 o'clock. And you're watching Getting Carried Away with Emma Norry and Anna Caig and our guest today.
So we are really excited to be joined this evening by crime thriller author Danny Marshall, who writes as D.L. Marshall. Thank you very much for joining us, Danny.
Hello, thank you.
I should just say Danny's books are brilliant. Anthrax Island and Black Run. When I first heard the concept for these books, I genuinely thought someone had written a book just for me.
Thank you.
The concept is if James Bond was from Halifax. So as a big fan of James Bond who grew up in Halifax, it doesn't get much better.
That's it in a nutshell, yeah.
We're going to talk about Danny's 3 choices this evening. He's picked some absolute corkers that I know me and Emma are both really excited
Very excited
about getting into. So I think we're going to start with a film, and Danny has chosen The Thing. So tell us why you love The Thing.
In half an hour, I don't think I can cover everything I love about this film. It's consistently throughout my life has been one of my top 5 films, at least. The setting, the everything about. I love stories that are set in a really closed environment, and you don't get much more closed than an Antarctic base deep in midwinter. And so, and that kind of vibe of paranoia and suspicion and not knowing who you can trust. It's the pinnacle of that that whole thing for me.
Yeah.
When did you first see it? Can you remember?
I can't. So I always remember because it came out in sort of 1982. When I was 3, so I didn't see it then.
So you weren't propped on someone's knee.
No, I didn't go and see it the cinema. But so I don't know when I first saw it, but I do remember throughout the 80s when I went to the video shop, it was a really recognizable cover. Yeah. And when you see VHS covers in the video shop when you're a kid, you kind of make up stories in your head about what that film might be about, because you're not going to be allowed to see it for another 5-10 years, whatever. And I saw the poster and it just blew me away, and I just started imagining what this film might be about. When I was about 14, my parents broke up, my mom went to live elsewhere, and the chap that she was seeing had a huge wall of VHS films. He was big into horror and thrillers and things like this, and I was allowed to go there and watch them. And you're kind of allowed to do what you want sometimes a little bit, and so it was probably around then that I watched his copy of The Thing. But I remember there's an earlier version because it's based on a novella from the 30s. Which is called Who Goes There, that I've only read bits of, and really I should pick a copy up and read it properly, because it's spawned so many kind of adaptations and things like that. But there are two horror films that I watched when I was a kid that are also based on that book. There's a film from the 50s called The Thing from Another World, which is basically it's The Thing. It's slightly different. It deviates from the novella a little bit, and the 80s film of The Thing is a lot closer to the original novella. But the black and white 50s film, I watched that when I was really young. I remember exactly. I taped it off TV late one night. I was taping something else, and I ended up the video. You know when you've got your video just recording. When you're a kid, and you've got it in long play, so you can tape about 3 or 4 films on a.
Yes, I'd forgotten that.
Well, I had something that I'd taped, and I don't even know what it was now. But after that, I had the original Night of the Living Dead, black and white, and The Thing from Another World, which is black and white horror film. And I watched both of them, and I must have been about 8
Oh
or
my
9.
word.
And because my
Terrified.
parents didn't know I'd taped these 2 films, and I took it round to my friend's house and we watched them and we wore that tape out. So I came to the thing via that original 50s film, which is quite weird.
So did it then scare you? Like, did you get really frightened by it?
I find the original 50s film scarier than the 80s film, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I need to see that.
Because I watched it when I was a kid. It's really good. I think the creature in it, so it's slightly different. Without giving spoilers away, the way in which it deviates from the book is so in the 80s film and the book, the nature of the creature, the alien, is it can take on any form and it can inhabit any person in this close cast of characters, but it also has their kind of memories and their voice, so you do not know who that guy is. Well, in the black and white film, it's like it's kind of more of a monster film. It's a straight monster, but the actual monster's really terrifying. Really scared me.
Yeah, because I have to say I hadn't watched it, because you love it as well, don't you, Emma?
Yeah. I really love it. I saw it years ago, and it really terrified me. But I watched it recently, like I watched it last week, and I hadn't seen it since my kids, so I hadn't seen it for like 15 years. And it was quite different to how I remember, and I've forgotten quite a lot of it as well. Which was quite surprising. You know, like what stays with us, like that overwhelming thing of claustrophobia, paranoia was really close, and the whole cold and the setting.
Yeah.
But I'd forgotten whole swathes of it. Do you know what I mean? I'd forgotten they go and find the Norwegian guy. Do you know what I mean? I'd forgotten they go and find all that bit.
They go to the other base.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten the flipping, like the whole ship in the ice. Like, I'd forgotten.
The funny thing is, the older film, the 50s film, they are, in a sense, the Norwegians. So they're the team that find the ship in the ice. So it's slightly different when you watch it. They go out, they find the ship in the ice, they dig up this creature, take it back and thaw it out. So they're sort of the people that the Americans go and find in the 80s film, almost. It's a bit different.
Gotcha.
It's just it really messed with my head. I had really freaky dreams that night after I watched it.
What did you dream of? What did you dream about?
It's just that idea of, someone that you know. So obviously in this instance, they're not family, they're colleagues, but they've been living in really close proximity, haven't they? But I think what got into my head was this idea of you could know someone incredibly well, and then this thing comes along and they look the same, they sound the same. You've literally got no way of kind of differentiating, but yet they've been possessed by this evil alien. And that just really messed with my head. So in my head, it was like, family, and oh my god, you don't know who anyone is, and it's such a powerful idea.
I think it came along, the original novella and the 50s film sort of came along in that era of paranoia in America.
Yeah, because there's the body snatchers.
Communism, I was going to say Invasion of the Body Snatchers is kind of exactly the same thing, and I think it probably came out around the same time, certainly the same era, sort of McCarthyist, communist sort of witch hunt era. Kind of really easily read into that kind of paranoia of, your neighbor could be a commie as well. You just don't know. So, which is funny because by the time the 80s comes along, things had gone full circle, and actually, it still plays out in the same way, but the world was a very different place by then.
Yeah. What do you love about it, Emma?
I just think it is that thing of who. That is a really scary thing, isn't it? Like not knowing who you can trust, especially when you're all kind of there together. So that's a really central thing of it for me. I think what's amazing on watching it on a rewatch is like whoever gets kind of possessed by the thing, they don't really know. They don't seem to really know they're possessed by the thing until they get threatened, until they're under threat. So I'll always remember the blood scene.
The blood scene is brilliant.
Genius.
Yeah, so they don't know if they've been.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Either they don't know or they're very Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, because in
Kind
the
of seem
beginning,
to suddenly come out of themselves when threatened.
yeah,
So
I think it is when they're threatened. Because at first you're kind of led to kind of suspect the guy's, I can't remember his name, but the guy's always with the dogs.
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? But he's not changed for quite some time. He's just a bit strange anyway. I think that's why it works so well in that setting, is because we instantly think ourselves, how would I be in that setting with that isolation? Do you know what I mean? Would I be the one that was like fine on my own, or because some of them are drinking and smoking or whatever. So it is that sort of challenging circumstances, and how would you react with that? But I had forgotten loads of it, but I do, and Kurt Russell is just
I was thinking we've gone 10 minutes and we haven't mentioned
Kurt Russell. I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan, but this is apex Kurt Russell for me.
Yeah. Is it? You think it's
yeah,
even better than Overboard?
Oh yeah.
I so need to see Overboard. I really do need to see
Overboard's brilliant.
Even better than Escape from New York.
Yeah, I think that came out just a year before this, didn't it? But yeah, no, this is McCready is the pinnacle.
Oh, he is amazing, isn't he? The man who's so hard, he doesn't need to wear his coat in the Antarctic.
All he needs is a cowboy hat and a pair of shades.
That's it. Yeah, he's like unflappable, isn't he? He's just like, yeah.
It's brilliant. I love how he said like you don't know who the monster is. So there's another adaptation of it from the 70s that people don't really recognize as an adaptation unless you've really seen it. It's called Horror Express. It's got Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and it's a straight horror film. And what happens is Christopher Lee is an archaeologist or an anthropologist or something, and he's transporting the dead body of some kind of caveman that's been dug up in Siberia, and they're transporting it on the Trans-Siberian Express in sort of pre-revolutionary Russia. And there's all this weird cast of characters on this train, and they're all trapped on this train, and this thing that they've dug up out of the ice is not dead. And looking into its eyes, it can inhabit that body. So it's another adaptation of
this. Sounds
exactly
brilliant.
It's a fantastic
what's it called? Horror Express?
Horror Express, yeah. It's I think it's from the early 70s, and Christopher Lee's brilliant in it. But there's a bit where who's in it? Telly Savalas is in it. He's a Cossack. And Emma
and I are both watching this tomorrow.
It's amazing. There's a bit where they're in a carriage, and there's Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and this Cossack played by Telly Savalas, and he says like, "What if one of you is the monster?" And Peter Cushing goes, "Good heavens, a monster? We're British, don't you know?" Brilliant. Go and watch it. Watch it tomorrow.
Brilliant. Have either of you seen the X-Files homage to The Thing?
I will have, but I can't think of it.
Yeah,
that's definitely worth checking out. So the episode I think is just called Ice or Snow or something like that, and it's in the first season.
Oh, I will have seen it then. Yeah,
and it's brilliant, and it's brilliant, and it's really good, and they really capture that whole paranoia thing. It's really good, but it is a direct, So, yeah, I'd kind of would like to watch that again. When I watched The Thing again, I was like, oh, I need to watch the X-Files episode again.
Yeah. I was really pleased that you chose it, Danny, because I was saying earlier, I don't really watch horror films anymore. I just get so scared. They just really get to me. And actually, despite the kind of crazy dreams, this didn't actually scare me that much. I wasn't like, the big test is whether I can go to the loo by myself. Sometimes if we've watched something really scary, I have to get my husband to come with me if I need to wee.
Well, the funny thing about The Thing is, if you're on your own, it's not scary.
Yeah.
It's
worse if you're with people.
Yeah.
And but the thing about The Thing is as well, I don't think the monster is that scary. And the creature, whenever it shows itself, it's not that scary. The scary thing is the tension.
Yeah.
And the paranoia and the claustrophobia and the fact that you can't even go outside. You can't even leave the room.
Yeah. You are yelling at I was yelling at the screen in that whole thing. I'm like, why don't they just all stay together all the time? For God's sake, like, why is anyone going anywhere? Like,
you just literally all need to point a gun at each other until summer.
Yeah.
The thing that made me laugh was that he invented that really random kind of scientific test with his wire and I'm like, why is anyone buying into this? Why is anyone like, oh yes, this is definitely really a foolproof way of finding out? It's just this completely crazy logic. He's decided if we stick a hot wire into this blood, I will definitely be able to tell if you're possessed by the thing. And that I thought that was really funny.
I can hear the noise that wire makes as it's
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's just scraping in the blood. Yeah, that blood is.
Yeah.
We should move on to your second choice, though. But you're right. We could talk about this all evening. It was just such a fantastic.
Can I just quickly ask? Just because I'm interested. Has anyone? So, have you watched the? Sorry, have you watched the You know, there's a newer one, isn't there? There's like a 2011. Have you watched that?
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I've only seen it once.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it, but I didn't really need to see it many more times.
Yeah.
But I don't dislike it.
Okay. Yeah, I will want to check that out because I'm just wondering, you know, is the 82 version is so good. It's kind of like, how can they better that, or what can they add or bring to that?
Well, it's sort of a prequel, so it tells the story of the Norwegians, who aren't all Norwegians, because Americans have to be in it because it's an American film. So they turn out to not all be Norwegians, but it's their story.
Okay.
It starts with them in another base, you know, 100 miles, whatever they are, and they find the craft, dig it up, and then it ends with the helicopter chasing the dog.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like it when it's all circular.
The funny thing is, it's got, I've forgotten her name. Is she called Numi Rapis?
Oh, yeah.
She's in
dragon tattoo person.
Is that her? Or have I got the wrong person? Anyway, it's the person who's in Alien Prometheus or Alien Covenant or one of them. And I always think Alien reminds me of The Thing. They both came out really close together, and they both have that character. There's the scientist character in The Thing who's saying, you know, he calculates that if it gets off Antarctica, then the whole world will be infected within like a month or whatever. And there's that scene in Alien as well where the science officer Ash, is it the android, does exactly the same thing and calculates that, you know, that if the alien gets to Earth, then it'll, you know, use all the hosts and all that. It's really similar, I think.
Yeah. Though Alien kind of messes with that format, doesn't it? That idea that, you know, Kurt Russell's in it, he's playing chess with his computer and drinking whiskey. Like, obviously, he's going to be the last person alive. Yeah. And Alien, like, really messed with that preconception, didn't it? That, that's the famous guy I've seen in something else. We know he's going to be the last man standing.
Chris Christopherson, who even looks like Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Is that who it is in Alien? I always forget.
It's there's the guy that dies really early on.
Guy in charge.
Because wasn't Sigourney Weaver pretty unknown when she made Alien?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it, yeah.
So yeah, brilliant choice. And I am amazed by how little we've talked about Kurt Russell. We were actually thinking of like subtitling this program, the Kurt Russell Appreciation Society, because we all but yeah, so let me ask you about your second choice, which is also brilliant, which is The Hound of the Baskervilles, the book The Hound of the Baskervilles. So yeah, tell us why you've chosen this one.
So I chose this as my book. I could have also chosen it as my film. I could have also chosen it as a TV series because I love each one. But I chose it as my book. I reread this, I would say once a year, at least every couple of years. And I reread it in autumn, which is when it takes place. I don't know when I first read it, but I was young, sort of preteens. And it really struck a chord with me, partly because I love my favorite genre of book is those that kind of straddle the border between crime and horror. And ones that sort of present a crime as it could only have been committed by a ghost, or and locked room mysteries that are kind of paranormal, and then it all turns out, obviously, at the end, it's not paranormal. And the Hound of the Baskervilles, I think, is the perfect example of that. That it's real, like, it's folk horror, because it takes all these like really English superstitions, black dog legends that are, you know, from all over the country, and rolls them all up and creates this kind of paranormal folk horror story. But it's Sherlock Holmes, so you know it's not going to be. It's going to have a logical outcome, and it does. So I love it. It's my favorite genre, and it's the best example of that genre, I think. But I also love the adaptations as well. So apart from reading the book, there's a film, my favorite film adaptation I watch at least once a year, and my favorite TV adaptation I must watch at least once a year as well. So between that, I'm ingesting Hound of the Baskervilles
3 times a year.
constantly, just in a drip.
So which are your favorite adaptations then? Which film and which TV version?
My favorite, so there's a Hammer horror film with Christopher Lee.
Oh my god, I just love Hammer horror.
I love horror.
Just saying it, Hammer horror.
Yeah.
It was so terrifying. Oh my god, I just used to be so young watching it so late, because it was before I was anywhere near a video, and it's just the music.
yeah.
Wasn't there? Did they always have the same music, or was it always different, or just?
I tell you, I used to stay up and watch. It can't have been too late, but my mum worked in. I must have been about 8 or 9. My mum worked in a care home, so she used to work in the evenings. And me and my dad would stay up late, and we'd get fish and chips or whatever, and we'd stay up late and we'd watch Hammer horror, and we'd watch like the Dracula films and things. And a few of them always have that same start, with Peter Cushing running across the table and pulling the curtains down, and Christopher Lee like disintegrating and stuff.
Yeah.
So I love Hammer horror. I love Hammer horror. But the Hound of the Baskervilles is brilliant because Christopher Lee's not a baddie. He's Sir Henry Baskerville, so he's a goodie in it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watched a Hammer horror film. I feel like I'm missing out.
Really?
I'm adding loads to my list of.
Brilliant. Hound of the Baskervilles is a really good one. It does deviate from the book a little. It starts with it has like this opening vignette that I absolutely love, which is it goes back and it just opens with the music and then goes straight into the story. But it's like, I don't know when it's set. It's supposed to be set sort of early 1700s or whatever, with these people at Baskerville Hall having a party, and this maid runs away from the hall and they chase her across the moors with a pack of hounds, and it's the birth of the legend of the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Rather, normally in the book or in adaptations, you get to that bit after 10-15 minutes into the story. What happens in the book is Dr. Mortimer comes to see Sherlock Holmes, and he brings with him this sort of transcript of this ancient legend of the family of the Baskervilles, and he reads it out to him. Whereas in the Hammer film version, they film it and tell you it, and then it sort of segs from that into him sat there reading it to Peter Cushing. So it starts in a totally different place to most other adaptations.
Yeah. I was going to ask you as well, because I think one of the things I really love about The Hound of the Baskervilles is the setting and how well they use the setting. And I was like, in quite an interviewee way, I should ask Danny about this, because your books are all about the setting, aren't they? So I was wondering if that, like, consciously or unconsciously, has influenced your writing.
Conscious, yeah, absolutely has. The Dartmoor in particular. We used to go, my uncle, when I was a kid, lived in a village called Linton in North Devon, which it's on Exmoor. It's just at the edge of Exmoor. So it's not Dartmoor, but it's very similar. And we used to go there almost every year when I was a kid. And some of my best childhood memories are from there. I remember reading ghost stories about around the location, around Exmoor, and my uncle and my dad telling me ghost stories when we were down there, and they all kind of lodged in there. So when I first read that, I could really see it in my head. I knew exactly what that landscape looked like. And we've since been to Dartmoor quite a few times. We've been to my girlfriend and I visited Dartmoor Prison.
Oh, that's romantic.
10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
We went. It was brilliant.
Lucky lady.
It was good. It was good. We had scones afterwards, but yeah. So we've been there, and it is bleak there. It's not a lovely place, and it's still a prison. I don't think it's like a Cat A. It's but you can visit. There's a section of the prison that's now a museum, so you can visit there. And in the nearby town, Princetown, there's a museum of the moors, so it's like natural history. But there's a section there about the Hound of the Baskervilles, and there's a huge sculpture of the hound, and things like that. So it's a good place to visit if you're a Hound of the Baskervilles fan. And we stayed on Dartmoor that time in a little village inn with a thatched roof and freezing cold bedroom with a and it was brilliant. And it was we went in November and it was freezing cold, and misty and foggy. Yeah. It was really good, really nice.
Which is your? I know, because Emma's really into her adaptations. Which is your favourite adaptation?
What, of Hound of the Baskervilles?
Yeah. Or Holmes generally, like which version?
Yeah, I've read Hound of the Baskervilles, and it was my first and only like Sherlock Holmes book. That, I've read some short stories, but the whole book. And I remember being just a bit gutted that Sherlock Holmes wasn't in it loads. I was a bit like, okay, it's Watson. And really enjoyed the book. The book is really atmospheric. And I think I might have seen the Hammer Horror, because I've got in my head a picture of a kind of party and then very fancy windows and some blonde maiden running across something squealing. So I might have seen that, but don't remember that, or hadn't remembered that. But I think my husband loves Hammer Horror and has mentioned the Hound of the Baskervilles loads. And whenever it comes on TV, he's always like, can we watch it? Can we watch it? And I always said, no, I don't want to watch it until I've read it. Do you know what I mean? So I read it like last year, so I can now watch it. And Holmes, who's played Holmes? Name me some of the actors who have played Holmes.
My favourite is Jeremy Brett, who did the Granada adaptations in the 80s.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's Benedict.
Yeah, I did like Benedict Cumberbatch's presentation, but I think I was just a bit. Yeah, I really fell for him with that. I really fell for his character. I think loads of it was just the bells and whistles of the production. Do you know what I mean? And how slick it was. It was brilliant. It was very kind of entertaining. I don't know how people felt about it that were real massive Sherlock Holmes fans, if they were kind of generally on the side of it. But the whole, that whole Moriarty thing and that was all brilliant. So I did really enjoy that series. I haven't seen what's the one with Lucy Liu and Robert Downey Jr. Have you seen?
Oh yeah, we did watch that. I did enjoy that.
I enjoyed what they were.
Yeah,
very different.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoyable.
Yeah, I haven't checked those out, but I will, because I do. It is just, I think with something like that, so iconic and steeped in our kind of history and everything. It's just really interesting seeing how people are tackling it, the stories, changing it, and what kind of essence, because with Benedict Cumberbatch, it was all very much like, let's bring out his, kind of
his coat.
But his autism and all that kind of stuff. It was much more overt and kind of like in the consciousness, like that's what that explains his addiction and all that kind of stuff. So it is really, it is interesting. Yeah, different versions. But I'd like to see the Lucy Liu and Robert Downey Jr. series, whatever it's called. Was it called Watson or was it called something? I can't remember.
No, I can't remember.
Yeah. What about you?
Me?
Yeah.
I think it's the Benedict Cumberbatch series that I love the most. I know I'm the generation that most people prefer the Jeremy Brett, and kind of he's their Holmes and he's kind of the classic. Yeah. But I really love that series. I just think it's brilliant.
I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it.
It's brilliantly written. The scripts were amazing, weren't they? I mean, they were so tight.
And I do love his coat.
The Granada version is my favourite. The Jeremy Brett and the Hound of the Baskervilles in particular is a really good one for the Granada one with Jeremy Brett. But whenever I watch those, I don't know if it's how they filmed them, they make me feel really cold. They're really kind of bleak bleak and stark, and I don't know what it is because I don't know anything about the technicalities of making a film, but they just make you feel damp when you're
Yeah,
watching.
that's a good description. Like, yeah, I can see that.
Like that
It's the way they
Victorian
look.
fog is
Yeah,
clinging to
yeah.
your skin.
Yeah, they're really stark and sort of washed out and very sort of very cold looking. But it's a really good version.
They're very distant, aren't they? They feel, yeah, there's that kind of remove, I think, which sort of.
The good thing when you live round here, you must have been, Anna, when you're a kid, and my mum took me to Granada Studios in Manchester where they filmed it.
Yeah, I don't remember that they'd filmed that. I just remember that's where they filmed Coronation Street, isn't it? Or where they certainly used to in the olden days. Yeah,
it's closed down now, but it used to be. I was going to say a theme park, but that'd be overselling it a bit. But I remember when I was a kid, my friends used to go to Florida and go to Universal Studios. Like, but is it as good as Granada Studios?
And you went to the Rovers.
Yeah. I went to Corrie and
this is what happens to kids who grow up in Halifax.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing such a rubbish job of keeping to time with this one, because I want to ask you about your final choice, which I love that you've chosen this. This is just brilliant. This is a TV program, and you've chosen Jonathan Creek. So tell us why you love Jonathan Creek.
I love locked room murders. True, true, impossible crime.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what every Jonathan Creek episode is, an impossible crime. I never watched it when it was actually on the first time round. I kind of came to it a little bit later. So I think it started in about the mid-90s, possibly the early 90s, with Maddie Magellan, the early episodes. And I think I came to it towards the end of the 90s and then really quickly caught up because I just fell in love with it from the first episode. And I've got the box set upstairs. I've watched them all several times. I can't remember exactly the names of every episode and which my favorites were because they kind of blur into one, but I know the storylines of them all. They're fantastic. And that's really what inspired me to write Impossible Crime. So while you said at the start, sort of, if James Bond was from Halifax, they're action thrillers. But at the core of them, they do feature an impossible crime. I love impossible crimes. They're so clever. Some of the Jonathan Creek ones are just fantastic. And some of them are variations of each other. So if you kind of watch it, you can start to see, you can think, well, like, no, they're telling us that for a reason. So you can start to understand and get into the mindset of it, but they're so clever.
So what's the appeal for you then of that whole thing of a crime that no one can solve? What's the...
Because it's not necessarily about who did it. I mean, it is, but it's more about how they did it, and it's how they get there. They're also hilarious. The way that it sets him up as he's a magician's assistant and who sets up tricks for his magician. And he's kind of the guy behind the scenes that works out all the impossible magic tricks on stage. And he brings that mindset to solving these crimes because he can obviously look at things and think, if I was going to design this as an illusion, this is what I would have done. So it's just really done how it works out. They could have gone with, a detective. They could have gone with, Maddie is a journalist in the first episode, so they could have gone sort of more conventional with that sort of route that a lot of series take, but they didn't. And I think the way it really works because he's this weird, kooky, offbeat character that's this guy that, for his day job designs magic tricks, but doesn't believe. He's the most cynical person ever and doesn't believe anything. It's brilliant.
Yeah, me and Anna were texting about it last night.
Yeah.
I'd never seen Jonathan Creek, and this is why doing this program is just such fun, because when people say their favorites, we try and watch and read them if we can, and I love just discovering things that I've never heard of and know nothing about. So obviously I'd heard of Jonathan Creek. I didn't know how old it was, so it started in 97. Didn't watch it then.
Oh, I thought it was earlier than that, so I must have come to it in the thousands.
Yeah, I think that's what it said, 97. But I knew of Alan Davies because I'd seen him way before he was famous. Like, yeah, like in some tiny pub, and he was hilarious. And this is, way before he was on TV and stuff. But I've got a real thing where I just can't bear to watch comedy actors or comedians trying to act. Yeah, I'm always just like, oh my God, they're just really bad. Like, I just can't watch anything. Like, I'm trying to think of someone, like even people I love, like Greg Davies, I just can't bear to watch them in like trying to act. It's like watching gymnastics for me. I'm like that. It's just really painful. So I watched the first episode. So I watched the first 2 episodes of Jonathan Creek, and I can't believe, but I knew so little about it that I assumed he was a detective, and I just thought, that's a bit of a cheat. So it was an absolute joy to watch the first episode, and I'm like, we're 20 minutes in, and I haven't even seen him on screen yet. And then he's at the supermarket, and he's like, and especially when you're rubbish at maths, you just love a maths genius, right? It's why I love Good Will Hunting. I'm like, oh my God, he's just added it up, and he's
added it up.
Yeah, and then it's like, and he lives in a windmill, and I'm like, oh my God, I love him. And it was just so,
his house is brilliant.
Yeah, but it was just really warm and quite dated. Everyone's smoking, and Anna last night was just texting me, just going, oh my God, it's got this guy in it from this thing and this.
It was like a who's who of the, I said a who's who of the 90s. Yeah,
there's a brilliant episode there might be a couple of episodes, or it might just be one. I think it might be one of the Christmas specials that Rick Mail is a detective. And he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And he's like a foil to Jonathan Creek because he like keeps getting there before Jonathan Creek with like, and he's really flashy. He's kind of almost like Lord Flashheart from Blackadder.
Okay.
He's like brings in a little bit of that and really like cocky and arrogant, but he's like come on, Jonathan. And it's hilarious. It's really, really good episode. The Christmas specials are brilliant.
Oh, I'll have to check those
I
out.
really enjoyed it. It's got that lovely, because my favourite TV program's Murder, She Wrote, and it's got that similar, like a sleuth that you just completely fall in love with, and that kind of, they've got their own really quirky way that they will sort, and absolutely that comfort thing of the more you watch, you're like, oh, that person just said that to Jessica. And when someone says something like that to Jessica, it means this, and and you feel like you know them. And then I love that, like the moment where the penny drops, like they all have their particular, like, the penny has just dropped expression, and it's it is lovely.
Just remind me, which is the first ever episode? Is it the one with the bunker?
No, that's the second. That's the
second one.
Yeah. So the first episode is the guy who paints like nudes with clown faces, and we're led to think he's having an affair with that weird. They're like they're all straight out of 1980s adverts, aren't they? But that model, and then it turns out, and they set up his wife so clearly. It's so funny. Like you're just like, yeah, it's brilliant.
But I loved that. I loved the way that he was like, yeah, this is how. So he does your like impossible crime solving, and he's like, this is how, she could have done it. But then he's like, but obviously that's not what happened, because that's preposterous. And he kind of messes with that whole formula as well. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, it's really good.
Is it the one? Is it the woman who in the office?
Yeah.
And she could have crawled round and
yeah. He goes through the whole thing and builds the whole set.
Builds the big set,
You could have rigged up a microphone behind this sofa and pretended to be on it. It's just like, oh.
And I was really with him as well, because I'm really rubbish at working out that kind of stuff. So I was like, yeah, but and why didn't they just set it on the ground floor? Like, why have they gone to all the trouble of like, I was probably like trying to fix it all out, and then but,
it is good.
It's a brilliant choice. I love that you chose that, because I have to say, like, we were because in our like entry credits and things it says leave your cool at the door, and we were like, wow, he really took us at our word there. It's like real kind of like granny TV, but I love that. I love that you chose that. It's brilliant.
It's superb. Absolutely love it. And I watch them now. They're on, I don't know which streaming thing they're on, but you can find them, and I still watch the old ones now. They do, I'll be honest, tail off. Okay. So the earlier episodes with Maddie Magellan, I think she's in either 2 or 3 seasons. and then she leaves, and then it's Julia Sawala or Nadia Sawala.
Okay.
Julia Sawala. She comes in. She's really good as well. Those are really good episodes. And then, but then they start to tail off a bit after that.
Okay. Yeah, because because we're watching it with it's Caroline Quentin, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're the best ones.
Okay. They're all on BBC iPlayer because that's where I've been like downloading it and then watching it in my lunch break at work. It's lovely. It's really nice.
I think I might watch more.
I think I definitely want to watch a few more just because I want to get. Because the first one is like all the setup, isn't it, and establishing them, and then the second one is like.
It's funny. You watch them in order, and you understand the characters. And Adam Klaus, the magician, is brilliant. And I think in the early episodes, it's the guy from Buffy.
Yeah. And the gold blend advert. And the gold blend advert, as you reminded me. Yeah.
Emma was like, "It's the guy from Buffy," and I was like, "It's the guy from the gold blend advert."
So showing our age, like 80s children.
He changes. I don't know when he changes. It might be in season 2. He changes to a different guy, and when he changes to the other guy, he's still Adam Klaus. He's just a different actor. So he's the same character, but when they change, he really goes downhill. Like in a good way. He's hilarious. He's brilliant. He's really, really good comic relief.
Okay. Cool.
Well, we should leave it there because we're trying to keep these programs to half an hour, but it's because we started with the thing. We knew we'd talk about the thing.
You could do a whole session.
Just talk about that.
But that kind of, we want to give all our guests the opportunity at the end. Just tell us kind of what's coming next for you, and if there's any projects you've got kind of coming up that you want to let people know about.
Or any books you want to wiggle in front of the camera or anything.
I mean, I could wiggle.
Do a bit of wiggling, Danny.
Yay. And I can highly recommend. Yeah.
Thank you. No, so I've written a standalone. Which, funny you talk about Dartmoor, it takes place entirely on Dartmoor and has numerous nods to the Hound of the Baskervilles. But it's not a horror, and it's not. It's more. I want to say it's a thriller. It's kind of more crimey than Anthrax Island and Black Run were. It's about a heist in a small Devon village. So I've written a standalone. And I'm just kind of finishing up that, and I'm not sure what will come of that. But I just wanted to mention it because it's Dartmoor, and I love Dartmoor.
We love a heist as well.
Yeah, I gotta love a heist. There's lots of heist influences in that. I always feel like when I write something, I just cram it full of like all my pop culture and film references, and that's no exception. But fairly soon, I might start work on a third Tyler book.
Is this where we get his kind of backstory and we see him in growing up in the zoo bar in Halifax?
Yeah. If anyone's read Black Run, no spoilers, but it might not be a sequel. It could be a prequel. Who knows?
Ooh, nice. Oh, well, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening, Danny. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been really, really good fun.
Especially with you being poorly. Thank you for bearing.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. As long as you feel all right.
Yeah. Do you feel a bit pissed now after you've been swigging whiskey?
Yeah, another shot.
Yeah. And tell us who we've got next week for the final episode of our first series, Emma.
Yes, next week we have got children's author extraordinaire, Louise Stowell, who has written lots of books for children, but she's got a book called Loki.
Yes.
Bad God's Guide to Being Bad, or Good Guys. I can't remember the full title. She will tell us all about it, and it's brilliant though, and it's all kind of like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but with Loki. Yes, we've got her on next week. I'm very looking forward to hearing her choices.
Brilliant. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, and same time next week, and we will see you then. Thank you.
See you then.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.